Hi everyone. I'll be taking you through the analysis of MICAT 1, which was conducted on 4th December. This will also help those of you who are planning to take MICAT 2. So let's get started and understand what kind of questions were asked and what was the overall difficulty like. Now, the first change that was seen this year in MICAT is, of course, the number of questions with 8 options on them. This has never happened in the history of MICAT that you had questions with 8 options. So there were some questions which had 4 options. There were some questions which had 8 options on them, making the paper overall a little difficult to handle compared to the previous years. The rest of the pattern was in line with the previous MICAT. So the MICAT 2020 pattern which was there, the same pattern was followed, with the only exception of questions having 8 options this time. Now, the overall test pattern was exactly same as last year. So you had the total duration was 135 minutes. The first section that you begin with is the psychometric test, which has 150 questions to be attempted over 30 minutes. And the good attempts in this particular section is all of them, of course, because you have to attempt everything. The second section is descriptive test, in which there are 4 questions as usual, and you had 25 minutes to complete this, and good attempt is, of course, all the questions. The section C, which is the aptitude part of it, had 4 sub-questions, 4 subsections in it, starting with divergent and convergent thinking, verbal ability, QA and DI, and then general awareness. On each of these, you had 20 questions, which had total of 80 minutes to attempt. And the good attempts in divergent and convergent thinking and VA would be around 11 or 12. And for QA, that attempt would be around 9 to 10 questions. And for GK, that would be about 8 to 9 questions. So we'll talk about the individual sections a little later. We'll first start with the psychometric test part of it. Now, for psychometric test, which was section A, first of all, it's a compulsory section, right? So you have to attempt all the questions, and these are the compulsory questions. The performance on these is used as a qualifying criterion. So there are no right or wrong answers when it comes to a psychometric assessment. You had a mix of questions. You had some questions which were true and false, and some which had eight scale, which is also called a Likert scale. So there is no negative marking in this particular section. In the descriptive writing, again, there is no negative marks. You have to attempt everything. And in section C, which is the aptitude test, you had MCQs with 1 mark for every correct question, and there was a 0.25 negative marks. So though there were questions with 8 options, they had the same marking scheme, which means that it is essentially not a great designed paper, because if you have questions with 8 options on them, ideally the marking scheme should have reflected that. But that is how it is. You had all the questions in the aptitude part which were +1 or -0.25. Now, between the two sections, you get 1 minute break. So once you finish your psychometric, you get 1 minute to transition to your descriptive writing. And after descriptive writing, you get another 1 minute break to transition into your aptitude test part. And within the aptitude test, you can move between the subsections. So the 4 sections that we spoke about, the divergent and convergent, the logical reasoning, and the QA, the verbal, and the GK. You can jump between these when you are in that section C, right? But then from section A, 1 minute break, then section B, then 1 minute break, and then section C is what you have. Right? Now, moving to the next part, which is of course the fact that you need to clear the psychometric test. Now, as I said, they have not given, there are no right or wrong answers. There's no minimum score that you need to get or something like that. That information nobody knows. But what they say is that you should clear the psychometric test. And on your scorecard also, you will get only 1 word against psychometric, that whether you have cleared it or you're not cleared it. Right? Overall, we are saying that if you've got around 35 to 38 in the section C, which is the aptitude part of it, I think you can expect to get a call subject to fulfilling the other criteria which is there, because it's a combination of your CAT and your MICAT score, or your ZAT and MICAT score. And because it's a combined score to get a call, the rest of it will also matter, whether how you're done on CAT or how you're done on ZAT. Please have a look at the detailed criteria, which is given on the MICA website. You can go through it. We have given a link. We'll also put the link in the description so you can check it out. Now, moving to the psychometric test part, you had 150 questions. About 33 questions presented a situation or a course of action, and they were true or false in nature. Right? Imagine a very simple question like, I like to gossip, right? And there's a true or false which is associated with that question. The remaining questions were on personality traits with 8 options, and the options ranged from totally disagree to totally agree, right? Now they appear in a linear order, so you don't really have to worry. You don't have to know which is the least and which is the highest. They will be presented to you in a set order. Now, for these questions, again, imagine any personality trait based behavioral questionnaire. For example, I'm comfortable working with numerical data, and you have to rate your response on that Likert scale. The section time is 30 minutes, and you have to be very fast in this. You have to ensure that you complete all of it. Please don't leave any questions on the psychometric test. Now, moving to the next section, which is descriptive. Now, descriptive test, as it has been a very unique feature of MICAT. The topic this time, so there are 3 questions followed by the 4th question, which is on creative writing. The first 3 questions are related to a particular topic. And in this particular MICAT, you had this as the topic, that cultural diversity is celebrated while individual efforts are made to assimilate the differences into the mainstream. Then why should we desire diversity? So the question 1 and 2 said that you have to present 3 points for the topic and you have to present 3 points against the topic. Now they say that you have 10 marks for each. The marking scheme is again up to them. It's a very subjective assessment ultimately, but they have never revealed what is the minimum thing that you need to score. For question 3, you have to write a 300-word answer to suggest steps by which a young manager can ensure creativity and innovation, keeping in mind homogeneous cohorts, right? So the entire thing was related to this homogeneous cohort thing, and you had to write a response on that. This has 20 marks. And the 4th question was, which is the picture story writing part. This has the maximum marks. So this has 30 marks. It's a test of your creativity. And as usual, there were 4 images which were given. The 4 images where there was a fire extinguisher, there was a horse in an open field, you had a QR code, and you had a mason tiling the walls. Okay, so you have to build a story on your own and write it. The images have a letter associated with them, so they will have A, B, C, D. You have to specify the sequence that you are using to write your story. It can be BADC, it can be DCBA, and so on. But that sequence has to be specified as part of your answer, and then you are free to craft your story in whatever way you want. Okay. So the total section time for the descriptive part was 25 minutes. Again, there's no negative marking here. The marking scheme itself is not revealed apart from the maximum marks that you have. Okay, so that covered the descriptive test. Then came, of course, the next surprise, which was the aptitude test part. So nobody, I believe, was imagining having questions with more than 4 options, but that's MICAT for you. You had questions with 8 options on them. So total time 80 minutes, total questions 80. You are able to jump between the questions and the subsections, +1 and -0.25. So there were a lot of questions with 4 options also, but there were a lot of questions with 8 options as well. In some sections, this number was close to about 10 to 11 questions. So in verbal, there were about 10 to 11 questions with 8 options on them. But in GK, that number was much higher, right? So you have to attempt only the questions that you are the most confident about. And the paper overall became a little difficult because of this. Right? Now let's start with the divergent and convergent thinking. Now here again, on the difficulty side, there weren't any major surprises. The composition was more or less similar, but the 8 option made it a little difficult. So you had questions on standard things such as the word association, statement and assumptions, analogies, conclusion, depending on some situation that is given to you, and so on. So there were total of 9 questions from these topics, and the overall difficulty was medium. Continuing from that, you had questions related to odd man out. You had questions on completing the series, so you have to identify what will be the next figure. So there were 3 questions total on visual reasoning, which were pretty straightforward. On the data sufficiency part, you had 1 question, and the overall difficulty was medium. And for miscellaneous, there was a total of 7 questions, which had logical puzzles, coding, decoding, and binary logic. Out of these, around 3 were difficult, 2 medium, and 2 easy. That would be the breakout. So out of the 20 questions on divergent and convergent thinking, we would say that an attempt of about 11 to 12 with 90% accuracy can be considered a good attempt. Now moving to the verbal ability part. The VA of MICAT has always been pretty interesting. So they ask questions across the spectrum. So you had questions from grammatically correct sentence, jumbled paragraph. There were 5 statements and you had to do the parajumble thing. There were 1-word substitute questions. There were 3 RCs. The first RC was on classical mythology hero. There was second RC on Bitcoin and decentralized finance. And the third one was on extension and effects of the human cell. Now, the typical length was around 450 words, but there was one passage which was shorter, which was the Bitcoin one. There were 2 questions on the first and the second RC, and 5 questions on the third RC. The overall difficulty you can see was medium to difficult. There were 5 questions on, there were 3 questions, sorry, on the closed passage, and there were 2 questions on word pair. You had to identify the synonyms, and that was easy. We can say that around again 11 to 12 questions with 90% accuracy can be considered a decent attempt in the verbal ability section. Moving to the quantitative ability and DI part. Here, as usual, the focus was on arithmetic. So there were 12 questions out of 20, which were arithmetic. You had time, speed, distance, percentage, ratio, proportion, profit, loss, SICI, and so on. And the questions were medium to difficult. Again, a lot of these questions had 8 options also. In geometry, you had questions from triangles and coordinate geometry, as it has been the trend of MICAT over the last several years that they have started asking slightly higher difficulty question in geometry. So you had questions on coordinate geometry as well. There were total 3 questions and they were medium. From modern math, you had only 1 question, which was difficult. The DI was medium again. It was a bar graph and you had 4 questions on it. Good attempts, we would say around 9 to 10 attempts with 90% accuracy. So we have maintained that thing that you should be attempting in these 3 sections or these 3 subsections. You should try to maintain close to about 90% accuracy. So attempt only when you are absolutely sure about it. Even if you want to take a chance, you should be, I would say, about 75-80% confident of what you are doing, right? And last subsection, which is the GK. Now, GK has always been challenging in MICAT. So you had 11 questions on national issues. There were 9 questions based on international affairs. Now, 8 questions out of these 20 were on static GK. There were 12 on current affairs. So current affairs is something that is a lot in your control. If you read stuff that has happened in the last 6 months or 1 year, I would suggest that you can use the IMS GK zone for this. I think you would have been able to answer these questions if you had read those things. But there were 8 questions on static GK and 12 on current affairs. It was slightly higher difficulty compared to the previous years. And as we understand that there are a lot of questions with 8 options also. That made the entire life difficult for all the students. So good attempts, we would say around 8 to 9 with 70% accuracy. So this was the overall analysis of MICAT 1. I hope this particular video has helped you guys and given your perspective. We expect a lot of people also to take MICAT 2. So I think this video will help you guys to prepare for it and be ready for that big change, which is 8 options. So I hope this particular thing has helped you guys. We wish you guys all the best for MICAT 2. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.